We move from examining the words that nurture us and give us solace during times of grief to focus on finding strength and support in nature and in the communities that we build. Our next speaker is Marcelo Valansi, dialing in from Costa Rica, and he is an entrepreneur dedicated to self-sustaining regenerative projects and resilient communities. Marcelo will be sharing a very personal journey of grief and will touch upon how to build resilient and regenerative communities that can support us in our times of grief. It is my pleasure to introduce you to the wonderful Marcelo Valansi.
Thank you for the introduction. And I wanted to start by saying we all go through difficult experiences and moments in life. The death of a close person, a separation, illness, crisis. I lived that in firsthand. 6 months ago, Sol, that means sun in Spanish, my wife died of a very long battle with cancer. She was an incredible being of light and a great teacher that left a giant mark with anyone that knew her. I had the honor and privilege of being by her side since until her last breath for almost 17 years. Together we traveled around the world. We started a family, we raised our children, and I had her support in all projects. In times where lives become uncertain or difficult, all that really matters becomes clear. And what became clear to me is the importance to have a regenerative and resilient community that can help us go through life critical moments. When I speak about regenerative, I speak of going far beyond sustainability. I mean a design process to restore, renew, or revive systems and resources producing much more than we consume. And resilient, I mean the capacity of communities to resist, adapt, and recover from adversity. But how are regenerative and resilient communities built? 10 years ago, I founded and developed Ecobia, a community in Costa Rica, that's where I live, in which we are around 180 people from 27 different countries that we live in total contact and harmony with nature. I grew up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, a big city. As for many, large part of my life, nature was just that place where I would spend a few moments to go for a walk or a vacation, but where I had most of the happiest memories. At age 20, I went backpacking for several years around the world. And that trip was my first opportunity to connect with nature, but for real. As I was traveling, I could see the disconnection that we have with the environment. Many of us are not aware where our food comes from, the water, energy that we consume, or where our waste goes. And that nature is much more than the supplier of raw materials. It is our home and the home of all other species. We might not realize it, but the disconnection with nature alters our mood. It increases our levels of stress and leads us to distance ourselves from our essence. And as a species is generating an environmental collapse that is putting our survival and future generations at risk. And I also believe that we are losing aspects of community life and contact with others, now with COVID even more. But for hundreds of years, we live in communities where the upbringing of children, the emotional support and growth wasn't only dependent on your partner or a small family, but on an entire community and village. But today, this is missing. Throughout my travels, I met ancient communities and new ones that live in contact and harmony with the environment. And I was able to learn what works, what didn't work, and why not. And at the same time, I love the convenience and comforts and benefits of modern life and technology. So I try to mix all these ingredients together, and that's how La Ecobia was born. After a long search, the land appears, and La Ecobia is located in a rural area in Costa Rica, which is called San Mateo. It is about 30 minutes from the city, the airport, and the beach, and next to an incredible crystal clear river. In less than a year, the concept of La Ecobia attracted a group of people of very diverse ages, nationalities, social and economic contexts who came to live in this community. Many times the concept of development appears associated with the destruction of the environment. It does not have to be like that. Development can and should, I think, be regenerative. The first thing we had to do is to regenerate the land, restoring soil that had been cow pasture for many years, and transforming it into, in one hand, a forest with native species, and that today is a reserve. And on the other, we planted many fruit trees that right now generates an abundant edible food forest. Today, we have orchards where every week all the residents will receive a basket with all the fruits, vegetables, herbs, and herbs that are in production. Producing food doesn't just reduce the transportation footprint. In addition, we use the waste as composting, and we transform it into soil that goes into, we reuse in the same gardens. We also produce our own electricity with solar panels and supplies ourselves with irrigation and drinking water. This gives us a huge feeling of freedom because we are generating our own resources. It is as if we are printing our own money. All the water from the toilets, showers, sinks of the house, means the sewers, go into a giant biodigester where it's not only treating all the water, which comes out completely clean, but the materials decompose and produce methane gas, which has many uses. We use it for cooking. We reduce the amount of garbage by reusing, recycling, and most important, reducing the consumption of unnecessary things. Every purchase we make has an environmental and social impact and consequences, which is why it is so important to be conscious when we choose what we need and where we obtain it from. Each of the families, we built our own houses with different materials. For example, the structure of my house was made with recycled cars. That is the structure of the house, and the walls are made out of recycled paper. What we look in the buildings is the energy efficiency. We achieve this by using different techniques, such as cross ventilation, natural light, and that the materials are low maintenance and high durability. When I tell people that I live in an eco-village, many imagine that I live like Tarzan. But life in nature does not have to be dissociated for the advances of modern life and technology. An important aspect for us was able to work remotely. So we didn't have to travel. So we have to travel as little as possible, and we can have access. We were the first project in Costa Rica with fiber optic to the home. So that gave us the opportunity to have a highway of fast internet to upload and download information. All the streets inside La Ecobia were made with 100% recycled panels, which allows the water to soak into the ground. A super important component of Ecobia is how we educate our children. I confess, I was such a bad student and I suffered for many years having to go to school and having go through several by force. I never believed that I would be involved in creating one. But before having children, I told Sol that if I ever had children, I would not send them to school. She told me that to better think of creating an alternative because she was not going to do homeschooling. Through some neighbors, I met Group Orion, a group of Ecuadorian educators who had almost 40 years of experience in educational innovation. And together we created Casa Azula, which in Bribri, that is a native Costa Rican language, means the spirit guardian of the seed. At Casa Azula, we believe that we all come into the world with the potential to develop, grow, and bear our best fruit. We seek to preserve the creativity, their desires to learn, and help them discover who they are, what they want, what they like, and what they are feeling. For these children, learn to catch their attention at every moment. They are little scientists going through experimentation, play, discovery, and self-discovery. We work with projects without exams, without grades, without classrooms, and without teachers. We have guides that are adults who observe the process and intervene only when necessary. Seeing the happiness that these kids go to school or the sadness they have when the holidays arrive, or hear them talking about their school fills me with joy. And I dream that one day all the children around the world can have an education like this. Many times they ask me, what was the most difficult when you put together La Ecobia? And of course, restoring the land and regenerative practice and the production systems require a lot of time and effort and learning. But the most difficult of all was not that. The difficult thing is the invisible structures of the community, building trust, learning to make decisions together, working on our egos, opening up to new ideas, and creating strategies to prevent conflict. And if conflict appears, how to resolve it. For that, we organize many common activities, retreats, workshops, meals, parties. We have women's circles, men's circles, and many things that we create to seek to create those invisible ties. And that's what makes a project successful. And we come from being strangers to make great friends or a tight family. That's what makes a community resilient and regenerative. When Sol died, the community members organized an incredible ceremony honoring her life. And for several weeks, every time we open our front door, we would find a buffet in front of our door. And I had the support and the love, not only with me, with my kids, and any need throughout the whole process of her cancer. I feel very lucky to be able to live in La Ecobia, where we support each other all the time. But this is my story and what I was able to do. To create this, you don't have to move to Costa Rica or go to the middle of the jungle. Many of us already have communities in our work, in our neighborhoods, in our buildings, groups of friends. And what we have to look for is how to create these bonds of trust, security, connection between ourselves and with the environment. A few weeks ago, I was walking through a national park and I came across a sign that says, "This land belongs to humanity. Some already died, others still alive, but most have not been born yet." We are at a critical moment in history where we can go and live in harmony with community and nature again. My dream is to see this type of communities expand around the world in order to achieve that harmony, and communities that help connect to each other. So I invite you to create your own one or join one. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to share my experience.
Marcelo, thank you so much for sharing your story and for the guidance on bringing community and nature into our lives. We have time for one question. So we have a participant wondering how living in Ecobia has shifted your experience of grief.
It's by living in Ecobia, it gives you more time. First of all, like I had the possibility to spend a lot of time with my wife and my kids throughout the whole process. And we were lucky that this lasted for many years. And we were able to talk about every single subject, and we haven't left any stone untouched. We talk about every single thing, and we did our grief together, like really letting go, honoring each other, thanking each other, and letting go of each other with a lot of love, and surrounded by a very supportive community that will have our backs, the backs of the kids, and all the time, every week, all the men, we meet every Thursday and we sit around the fire. For 2 hours, we have the time to share how, like from a very vulnerable and confidential place, how we are really doing. And whatever it says there, it stays there. So we have the opportunity, there are not many spaces for men to open up and be able to express what is truly going on inside, and be able to cry, scream, laugh, and have a group of friends to support you. And the same thing with women. I cannot speak so much about the woman because I was never invited there, but there are many things in the community to create that support and that back.
Thank you so much. That's so beautiful to have these men's circles where you have that space to share and be vulnerable in for like a gender role that doesn't always have that recognized. I think one final question we have is from Alice. Did the kibbutz model in Israel, historic kibbutz model in Israel, inform some of your philosophy and practice?
Uh, I visit many communities around the world, and part of my travels were in Israel. And the communities, the kibbutz, what I found out is pretty much that the only ones that were successful are the ones that had a successful business and they have tons of money to be able to support themselves. So each individual, uh, it's mostly like responsible for their own economies in my community. We all have our work, so it's more similar to a moshav than a kibbutz. But I mean, they are very, very good examples of community in kibbutz as well.